What is going on, guys? My name is Demetri, and welcome to the Rise Productive Podcast. In today's episode, we have a guest, Casey Bruns. He's a personal finance YouTuber, and I'm really excited to have him on the show. So get ready for episode 6 of the Rise Productive Podcast. Hey, Casey, what's up?
What's up, man? How you doing?
I'm doing good. We had some technical issues leading into this. That was quite the fun time, wasn't it?
It's a good 45-minute journey, but it's the journey to the top has many bumps that most people don't see.
Yeah, you got to do what you got to do there.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to get it started off like I do with all my podcast episodes, talking a little bit about what your life is like, where you come from, and all that kind of stuff.
Okay. So what my life is like, I would say that my life is, is interesting. I actually just did a video with my parents about like kind of how that formation of my life was. It's been a series of very hard work, Yeah. And it's kind of weird for me to answer that question just because I don't really define my life in one direction. I've done like army stuff. I've done, work in the hospital. I've done, these side hustles, YouTube. It's just always been one constant hustle for me. Like when I was a kid, I would like grab, a ton of Halloween candy and just like try to sell it on the recess, like to sell it during recess. It's just always been like this weird hustle that my parents, yesterday talking to them, that they had the blessing to like just watch it unfold. But I've just always been like just like stuff, do, and just very active, kid and now adult. So that I guess that's kind of my synopsis of it. Yeah, that answer that question.
So what exactly do you do for a living? Just so to let the people know.
So my job right now, my W-2 says Lab Corp on it. So I do that. I also work for the Army Reserves. So, probably like 50% of my income comes from Lab Corp. Probably like 10-15 comes from Army Reserves. And then everything else is just like little side hustles and stuff like that on the side. So mostly if I had to just straightforward answer that question, I would say, Lab Corp is what I do. I work in a microbiology lab, and we're testing for the disease currently. So that's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of a crazy time to be a lab tech.
Yeah, for sure.
I guess a good question I could think about for you would be like, how has the military sort of impacted your life and the outlook on work and finances and that sort of thing?
So what the military really taught me was it was a big thing of mindset, more so than, they say if you want to go into the military, it shouldn't be for, the financial rewards, because I think the biggest rewards that people see through the military are, the shift in mindset, that you can go through a lot more stuff than you ever thought was imaginable. Like, being in those field problems, or being in, even like the simplest training, like basic training, like that's like something that in the military, we don't even really talk about it, but like, that's like something that would break a lot of, and does break a lot of civilians. You go through that stuff, you go through being in the field for 30 days. And what I'm getting at with all this is that you realize that, through your deployments and all this stuff, that you don't need everything that you felt like you need. You're off in these third world countries and you see what they have, how they're living, and you realize how much, have privileged of a life you're living. So as far as that, it made me realize like I could be working harder, things could be worse, and I don't need nearly as much as, what we think we need to get by and to be happy.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was always told by people who have like gone through basic training that it's like actually really kind of hard, and it is a breaking point for a lot of people because you guys, obviously you're not allowed sort of pretty much anything for like what, 30, 60 days?
Yeah, it's a 9 or 10 week training. When I went through, it was it 10 weeks or 9 weeks? I don't know. I went through in 2012. So it was a while ago. I think there's 3 phases. There's a red phase, the blue phase, and a white phase. So red phase, you get in there, the drill sergeants are right in your face. Like, that stuff that you see on the movies, which was crazy to go through. And, it just kind of snaps that civilian right out of you, like all those, like, oh, just little notions that you have when you get there. Like, I'll kind of do this on my own time. And like, if I'm late, that's okay. It's like, no, there's no late, there's no, none of that stuff. There's no BS. There's no like, oh, if I mess something up, um, it was somebody else's fault. There's a lot of ownership. There's a lot of like, you're going to make your bed, you're going to do it this way. It's very regimented, and it pounds that into you.
Yeah, I'm guessing the discipline that you have for yourself now is even a higher level than it might have been before.
Yeah.
That's definitely the main thing I always hear from people who've gone and had any sort of military experience. They feel like their discipline is just, I mean, massively improved when they come out of it, or well, they're still in it, but yeah. I do know that your education expenses get helped out when you go into the military. When you're in the Army Reserves, does that also happen?
Yeah. So I would say that is not a bad deal, but this is just my personal experience. And people will see that I'm not sitting here recruiting for the Army Reserves. If you're going in for the education expense, the return on your time um, is going to be better elsewhere, like applying for scholarships or something.
Okay.
So they did help me with my school, but as far as like the time commitment that you're giving up for that school, you're giving up 8 years of your life. You could, you
Work a
could
job.
potentially, yeah, you could potentially work a job and pay for your school. So if it's like, oh, I want to pay for school, you know, then there's other ways to just pay for school. But if you want to actually be in the military, like people ask me all the time, should I go be an Army officer? And I'm like, why do you want to be an Army officer? We need to talk about that first before you're like, oh, well, I heard the GI Bill is gonna, help my school out. And like, how much money is that really? Like, what is you being an Army officer for 8 years worth if you don't actually want to be an Army officer?
Yeah, that's a lot of waste of time.
Yeah, exactly. If you're not in it for the right reasons, that's
Yeah, makes
it's
sense.
not the move.
That's the move, not the move. So speaking of personal finance, Casey is actually a personal finance YouTuber, as I said, and I wanted to talk to him a little bit about how he was introduced into that sort of realm of personal finance. I have my own story, but I'm sure all of you want to know about Casey's.
Okay, yeah. So my story basically started. Man, I was down and out at the end of my college career. I ran track in college, but what basically had happened was I picked up this night job. I was trying to run my fifth year, senior year. Picked up this night job, and it was stressing me out. Couldn't hack it, and so I was like, I either gotta quit this job, or I gotta quit school and track because I was just running a fifth year of track.
Yeah.
Ended up quitting the job because I was going through it at the time. But anyways, all of a sudden I had all this extra time on my hands, so I was like, looked up how to make money online, and I don't know exactly whose videos I came upon, but it directed me over to YouTube. Eventually, I found people like Graham Stephan. I found people like, Meet Kevin, all these people online, Dave Ramsey. And, you just video after video, related after related, you just start to learn so much that it's like, wow, this is a whole new world that's been opened up to me, especially with me coming from my background. I didn't have the worst financial education, but a lot of this stuff, I had to learn on my own essentially. So that's kind of how I got started, and that tracked me through things like Uber, that tracked me through things like eventually Airbnb, and just like all these different sources of income that you could bring in on top of your job, and how that kind of ensures your safety of income. Like, not to like diminish people's struggle during this time right now, but besides just like the emotional, like by feeling it vicariously through others, I'm not really financially struggling through this because there's so many ways for me to draw income that I started 3 years ago. Which, yeah, obviously there's the empathy there, and I see what's going on politically and socially, racially lately. But yeah, but
Yeah.
anyways, there's a lot of places for me to draw. So anyways, that's kind of the answer to that question.
I definitely do agree with you on how, like, with everything going on, and there kind of is a situation where, yes, I do genuinely feel like it's difficult for a lot of people who had like one source of income going into it, but it'll hopefully be an eye opener going forward that you can't rely on like one source of income, especially that's not like not
It's not
physical
yours.
proof. Yeah, that too. I agree with that. It's if it's not yours, but even people who had businesses that were like only in-person physical products,
Right.
I'm trying to think of an example. Speaking of Graham Stephan, do you remember he had that Millennial Money episode with the person who cuts hair in Detroit?
Right. Yeah.
Yes. He has an entire product line outside of him, like him cutting hair. So he probably still had some income coming in, like during this
Right.
time. But a lot of people who cut hair and that kind of stuff, they don't have any sort of second income coming in. So the second everything got shut down, they're really not in a good spot. So I'm glad that you fell down the rabbit hole pretty early in life, and I have too. And I'm trying to find different ways to make income. I've done some like freelance stuff during the school year, and I'm always so busy, and it's really hard to. But I hope people realize after this that they got to find a way to like diversify their income at least a little bit. Because if this happens again and you don't have a diversified income or some sort of online income, that sucks. But you kind of had like a pretty big warning with everything going on.
Yeah, and I like that comment of falling down the rabbit hole, because what I noticed and what I was trying to communicate with your first question of how did you come into the personal finance world is that falling down the rabbit hole, it was a product of me breaking up my habits. I had a huge breakup happen at that time. I stopped running track. I was still working my night job. I had a ton of free time. When something like an event like that happens in people's lives, you're about to fall down the rabbit hole. And which one you fall down, that's huge. And I'm very grateful. You could call it lucky, you could call it divine intervention, whatever you want to call it. I was very lucky that I fell down the rabbit hole that led to people like Graham Stephan, people like, Kevin, people like Dave Ramsey that said, hey, this is how you get your life on the straight and narrow. So I think that this breakup of people's habits societally with the disease is a potential blessing for a lot of people, because everyone's habits got broken up. You can't go to the bar. You can't, you couldn't go to certain restaurants. You couldn't take your normal path through life. And where you fall down that rabbit hole, I feel like it's going to be huge moving forward here.
Yeah, I agree with that. I definitely have been talking about on my channel a lot of a lot about how, you have all this extra free time and what are you going to do with it? Could you just sit around and watch Netflix? Yes. Was that pretty fun? Yeah. But people definitely need to take the time and fall down the right rabbit hole. In my last podcast, I talked with my guest about mindfulness and how we don't really do that much. And instead, we usually just consume content, right? And mattering on what kind of content you consume, you can really go into the right or wrong direction. You understand how easy it is to like be on YouTube, and whether it's on just some random video, you feel like you click on something that's outside of the niche that you're currently watching, and you watch through it, and then YouTube recommends all of that stuff. Like
something similar to it.
Yeah, or even the same YouTuber a million times, even though it's not something you're crazy into. You just kind of watched and you're just getting thrown all this content. And if that's some sort of negative thing, or it's something that's just not productive or anything like that, like for example, I used to watch Chris Smoove. He was
I loved him.
Dude, he's so good. But I looked him up again after like years. He's a 2K YouTuber, used to play COD a lot, for those of you that don't know. And I watched one 2K video. My entire recommended feed now is Chris Smoove, Modern Warfare 2, Modern Warfare 3, and Black Ops videos from 10 years ago. And I'm like, what did I do? Like, I watched one video YouTube. Like, I know I like Chris Smoove, but this isn't even the same account I used when I was a kid. So that doesn't even make any sense.
Yeah.
So the rabbit hole really, I don't get it. The rabbit hole really doesn't stay consistent unless you stay consistent with it. Because I've watched infinitely more self-development videos and personal finance videos than the one Chris Smoove video I watched. And the next thing you know, just everything gets shifted. So I really do feel you when you say that when life changes happen, you really need to fall down the right rabbit hole. Because myself personally, early in college, I ended up getting a lot of free time, and I stopped being a socialist I was. And instead of like doing positive things with it, about like the first, I want to say like freshman, sophomore year, a little bit junior year, like I just had a massive like World of Warcraft addiction.
Yeah.
And then the second I stopped doing it, I somehow like 180'd, So it's not something that can be, it doesn't have to be your life story. It could just be a chapter of your life. And like Casey said, with like he fell down the right rabbit hole. If he didn't, he very well might be in a different situation with the thing going on right now, and I think that's something to always think about when you kind of hold yourself accountable for the decision you make in your life, because consistent decisions and habits of even the content you consume can really lead to your life successes.
Right. Exactly. Just as easily, I could have, I had friends that were, huge into the party scene, and they fell right into the addiction rabbit hole. And I could be right there with them today, and I wouldn't be here. And instead, I fell into the hands of a lot of people who are honestly, if we're being totally honest with it, they're addicted to success. It's the same addiction. It's just a lot better of an outcome. In my personal opinion. I mean, if you want to, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, no,
if you want to party, then you do you. But yeah, that's not. It's not where I'm at in life right now. So
I think there's a lot to be said about the whole like party scene in college, and that is really fun when you're in it.
yeah,
But I don't know how many people, and I'm not speaking for everyone on this, because a lot of people do look back on those memories fondly, especially if they do the right balance of it. But a lot of those people who end up being the person that party the entirety of the time they're in college, from what I've heard at least, end up saying one of two things: either one, it was really fun, or two, I don't remember much of it.
yeah,
So I'm sitting over here like, okay, if there's a chance I'm not going to remember the majority of what I'm doing, like, why would I waste my time on
yeah.
that thing? Like, it was so fun. Was it though? Because you don't
Was it?
remember. Yeah. I would much rather be in a better financial situation, have better mental health, because I feel like when you party all the time, maybe you're just kind of putting off some of the mental health stuff. And I'm not saying people don't put off mental health stuff or their personal issues just through partying. People do it through a lot of different vices in their life. I was doing it through video games. I understand. I'm just trying to make the point that, like, I don't go to parties all the time because is it fun to hang out with people I enjoy? Yeah, but doing it excessively I don't really see the benefit.
Yeah, for sure. There's got to be that balance there.
Yeah. I don't know how that tangent happened, but I actually like that one. That's something I'm passionate about. I don't really talk about much.
Yeah, for sure.
I do want to talk a little bit about. I spoke with Casey before on this, but I think it's a good thing to go on from how we're talking about the rabbit hole and falling down the right rabbit hole. Tell us a little bit about how your like consumer culture in your family was growing up, because I'm sure that's probably your opinions changed since you were younger.
Yeah. So what I would say is, so to give a little context on like my family, where we came from. We came from, not me personally, but my parents came from like a really bad neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
So like they didn't come from money. So they ended up coming into very high incomes. And basically through watching them bump their head, I learned a little bit more about, my financial education. So I don't want to bash my parents as
No,
far
of
as
course.
like, their consumption, because they did everything that they learned. I learned at this, at the age that they were and at the age that I was. So when they first came into money, they were just like, oh my goodness, like, you just threw, $250,000 at them, and it was a little bit more like, let's spend it.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't as much investing. I mean, there was investing. Like, don't get me wrong, they're worth like multiple millions of dollars now. Like, they sorted it out, but I guess more so, I had to take some personal accountability there. That like every time that I would save up to earn something, it was so that I could go buy something.
Oh,
And so like there was kind of a little bit of an emphasis on savings, but it was more like I'm saving to go buy a thing. So I never personally made that connection. My parents were investing, but I think that one thing that I would have appreciated from them, which they I love my parents, they did a great job. But one thing I would have appreciated was having a custodial account,
okay.
um, because then I would have made that connection of like, oh, you know, this is a dividend. Like what, like what is, why am I getting paid just because I had money? That didn't I didn't make that connection. And one last thing on that, as far as like the consumer culture, is that when it comes to building generational wealth, a lot of people just think that it's the money that one generation transfers to another, but another component of that is the knowledge that one generation transfers to another. So the knowledge that was transferred to my parents was, I'm gonna, you know, like not be a high school graduate.
Mm-hmm.
Was, that was my grandparents. They're working, railroads, and obviously, if you go back far enough in Black culture, you run into some dark times. Just say that. But like that was the generational wealth that was transferred to them, and then what they're transferring to me is significantly more. And then moving forward, just as far as the information, there will be more. So that's kind of roundabout way, but yeah, that's kind of where that mindset came from. And I had to make a little bit of a shift to say, like, okay, what is an investor? Does an investor just buy a house, or do they also buy stocks, and do they also have different types of portfolios? Do they buy land? Do they have oil stores, things like that, commodities, gold? There really wasn't any of that in our household. So if I would give my parents a B plus, because they made it to be a multimillionaires, but I wouldn't give them an A quite. Let's just say that.
That's funny. The old B plus.
Yeah.
I can definitely completely understand where you're coming from with the generational wealth type thing, because for my grandparents, they were very frugal, right? They're very frugal. And I'd say moving forward with that, then like with my parents' generation, they ended up using that part and then expanding on it, like kind of how you're doing with the sort of fiscal responsibility that goes beyond just like save your money. It goes into diversifying your income. It goes into having stocks that pay dividends. It goes into having a bunch of different investments and having a very diverse portfolio overall. And then for me, they did a good job. My dad did a good job specifically of making those things clear because of what he does for a living. So I feel like it's hard probably for each generation to know without like doing some real reflection of like, hopefully each generation is telling the next generation something more than the previous had known. And in most cases, I'd say they do a pretty decent job if they're on the track towards success. But there are some situations where, man, like trust fund kids.
Yeah.
Like I always heard from my family that like third generation businesses fail. Like the third generation in a business usually fails.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've ever heard that.
Yeah. So I've already mentioned this, I think, within this podcast, but I was just filming with my parents because we wanted to talk about I wanted to talk about what makes a financially responsible kid. And I was like, I'm not going to go on my channel and say that because I don't have kids. So like, who's going to be like, who's going to believe me? Even though like, obviously I had parents. So like, maybe I know from the other side, but anyway, one thing that was very important in our household that we had to work for everything. Like we actually had a payroll that had you had things that you could get paid for, the dollar amount, like cutting the grass was like $15, and that grass, we had 5 acres of property. So I was making like $3 an hour. And like, so if I wanted school clothes, I worked. If I wanted to not get taxed, so they had a tax column. If I wanted to not get taxed, I couldn't have things like food in the room. I couldn't, there were certain things in the house that I couldn't do, and I could go negative for the month. Awesome. Negative. I could owe them money. So it built good habits, and it like made me work. So one of the things that they were like, it was very important, was that, a lot of kids, how they get money from their parents is they walk up to their parents and they say, "Hey parents, can I have some money?" And that's like the way that behaviors and habits happen. Like you do that, you get the money. It's like pull string, get cookie. All right. That's how you get money. You walk up to mom and dad, you get the money. I did that. And it was like, they put a rake in my hand. So it's like, oh, so I work and then I get money. So that's like how my mind was formed. Like, okay, this is how you get money. And then if you do bad things, then you get less money. So that really was kind of how they, so
I give them props for that. That's a really good idea. Might have to keep that one in the back of my mind for later.
Yeah, for sure. Just in case when those kids start popping up.
Yeah, geez.
As they do.
I was never given any sort of tax or anything. I generally never asked my parents for money. And I guess I did get paid for cutting the grass and doing some chores. So like, I understand that, but I really like the idea of the tax part because it's got to be hard for parents to like try to teach their kids to keep up the basic things like keeping your room clean, keeping your bed clean, keeping food out of your room. I think we just had a lot of general rules that were like, don't eat outside of the kitchen and that kind of stuff, and we just kind of stuck to it. So there's a whole rabbit hole of parenting advice that I really can't give, so I'm not going to get down into that.
Yeah, you might want to do the same, like the kind of the same episode, with your parents. You might
Yeah,
learn something, because I learned a
yeah.
lot from like them just explaining what they did, things that I had forgotten that they did, and why they did them. I was like, oh, so like that, it kind of like it was habit affirming. I was like, oh, so this is where my habits come from, like because you guys did these things when I was younger, like that's why I think the way that I think.
That's interesting. Yeah, 'cause,
It was crazy.
I want to try it out. There was a comment on one of my podcasts saying, like put your parents on the podcast. I think it actually has happened a couple times, and I was like, yeah, I think maybe I'll eventually do that. But I definitely should try it out. I'll probably get some insights that I didn't have before.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk to you a little bit about being debt free at such a young age because you did go to college. You did a lot of things to keep the debt down as much as you could, but inevitably, as I think you told me, you came out with a little bit of debt. Is that right?
Yeah, I came out with uh a lot of debt overall, but mostly it was because of a stupid car purchase. So I
Oh
had
man, I
about
hear that all the
37.
time.
Yeah, I had a 37K. My mindset was like, oh, I'm making money now. Like I'm gonna get that nice car that I've always wanted. Got the nice car. The car was nice. It was a 2017 Toyota Tacoma, and I had speakers in it. It was great. It was a fun time for about 6 months until I started watching Dave Ramsey, and you know what he told me to do? Sell the car. I was like, all right, Dave, sell the car. And it's funny, like the people who don't call that also end up selling the car. That was one of me.
That's
I was one of
funny.
those, but I ended up with about 90K in total debt, and ended up cutting that down by just like selling into a less expensive car, and was able to pay off $90,000 in debt within it was last month. So all the debt mounted at January 2018. So that's basically what's that, like 2 years, 4 months.
That's
Was able to
really
pay off.
fast.
Yeah, so paid that off, and then because I was also investing in my 401k, ended up at like 40K net worth, today. So ended up increasing my net worth by what's that, 130K in 2 years and
Some odd months.
5 months.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was just a lot of commitment, and like it was a lifestyle change. And then eventually it wasn't even commitment. It was just like, it was just habit at that point. Like I'm not strained. You don't strain to like do certain things that you do, like, like strain to tie your shoes or something. It just became a habit.
That's a really inspiring story, honestly, because I know a lot of people probably come out of school with a similar amount of debt now. The
Yeah.
college expense level is so more, it's so significant in comparison to previous generations. Like, let's be real here. Like,
Hmm.
I think in Illinois, tuition for the University of Illinois, which is the main university here, um, it's like 35K a year.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Yeah.
And nobody gets scholarships because it's a state school. And I'm just like, that for some states, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And there's even a disparity in states, I think, at this point, because you're from Washington, right? Wait, the next state over, Oregon, I think their in-state tuition is like 20K, maybe, like with board.
Hmm.
And I'm just like, there's a 15K a year disparity between states now. Isn't that crazy? So some
Yeah.
people have less of a chance for even in-state tuition and bailing them out in a way to make school easier on them.
Yeah.
And even if the school's good, like they're going to be put in a spot that maybe you were in where even though you were an athlete and you hustled and stuff, you still came out of school with a fair amount of debt, and it's really hard to get out of. But the fact that you were able to just take really strong habits and make it so that you would be out of it in 2.5 years, pretty much, that's really quick because a
Yeah.
lot of
So
people have it for years and years and
yeah,
years.
like 10 years. So yeah, I was actually just, or two things. I was actually just talking to somebody. They had like 60K in debt, and they were like, oh, I'm putting like 600 towards it every month. And I was like, okay, so that's 100 months.
Hmm.
And then like, so that's 8.33 years. Like you're 29 years old. That's what, that's 37, you know, you'd be 37 or 38. It's a lot of time.
That
I
is a
was
lot of
like,
time.
so I was like, I didn't even finish. I was like, I'm not gonna like, I'm not prescribing anything. I'm just saying, it's 37 years old we're talking about. And it's like, you want to buy a house at some point, like you want to, and do you want to have the house while you're still in debt? And it's like, I don't know, that sense of urgency. But then also, is also going to say, I think the thing that's, I don't want special, whatever. The thing that I think should be inspiring about my story is that I didn't have a super high income. I didn't have any high income producing skills. Like my job, if I didn't work any overtime, the job itself was only $23 an hour.
Oh
It
wow.
was the things outside of that. It was the fact that I worked on the weekends. It was the fact that I worked after work, doing Uber. It was the fact that whenever I would, go away for any given time, I would rent my house on Airbnb from underneath myself. It was those
Oh
little
wow.
things that like just the relentless pursuit of like, I'm gonna get there. I'm gonna get there. Like somebody hits me up, text, hey, what are you doing today? I'm getting I'm getting my debt paid off, which like, hey, say what you will about that as far as like a lifestyle choice. And people don't have to do that. I don't expect that from people, but to see that it is possible, and I'm not like an insane person, but like it's possible, and you get through it and you're on the other side and you're better off for it. So
Yeah, I think a lot of that with people is, especially when they hear initially, like, I'm going to be in debt for 10 years, or
yeah,
something so to the 8.3 year number. The initial thought by a lot of people is like, that's going to be the case. They don't really think to that
yeah,
next step of, oh, well, I could pay it off quicker. I don't need to pay my minimum. Like, it could be off much quicker. But the problem is they weren't willing to do things like what you're saying is, I don't want to say it's extraordinary in the sense that like nobody could do it, but it's extraordinary in the habit building that you made for yourself and the habits that you chose to have, because for some reason it seems like a lot of people are willing to put that debt and that stress on themselves for such a long period of time, while at the same time doing a bunch of stuff that isn't going to lead them to pay it off quicker. Like, it's weird to me, like if the debt is really stressing you out that much, you'd
yeah,
think you'd want to kind of just take a 2.5 year very strict approach on yourself, and then now you're in a situation where you're in your mid early 20s and you're like, oh, I'm pretty good, I'm on the upswing, rather
yeah,
than people who are worried, like you saying someone's going to worry about like wanting to buy a house at 37 because they're like just finishing off their debt. That's real for a lot of people.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's what I feel like, that's what depresses people. Like, and it's very fatalistic. It's like somebody got to be very careful about what thoughts you allow to plant themselves in your mind, because people will plant that in your mind like, oh, that this is what your minimum payment is, this is how much you can make, and you're like, oh, this is how much I will make. You're like this little zombie that's like, once you accept that into your reality, it becomes your reality, because you're like, okay, this is going to take me 8 years and I don't like this. The fact that the call to action for me is, I don't like this, and then the next thing is, I'm going to change this, I'm going to do something different. Not just, I don't like this and I'm just going to not like my life. That's to me, that's a call to action to make some type of drastic change.
Yeah, because no one else is going to change it for you. There's no
Yeah,
magical thing that's going to get you to not be in some crazy amount of debt. I think there's this whole concept right now that maybe there will be some sort of relief to the population regarding student debt. And I don't want to like burst anyone's bubble on this one, but if they do that, like, inflation's a thing. So
yeah,
like post out of debt, you're going to be kind of in a meh situation because your degree is kind of worth less, and like, well, inflation's bad overall, but I want to get into
yeah,
that. I mean, like, I'm not waiting for the government to bail me out if I'm in that situation. So I really think what you're saying resounds in another aspect that I wanted to get into, which is like the fact of being debt free is exactly what it is. It's pretty freeing and it gives you a lot of options.
exactly. I just for example, on the options thing, like I was just offered a job in Texas, and I can consider taking a lot less income if the opportunity's there. It was a job with the AMed Center School, which is Army Medicine Center School down there. And it's like, if I take that, I'm going to be able to progress way better through my Army career. So even if I'm making less money down there, maybe the opportunity is there. Maybe the opportunity is there to, get real estate. And the other thing is, like, if I don't have this debt, maybe I can float, my house payment while I rent this out for a little bit, just because I have that extra income freed up.
Mhm.
It's like your options, for lateral movement and upward mobility just get better as you move up. It gets easier to move up. It's kind of,
Yeah.
like compounding.
It's like compound interest.
Yeah.
But that's a really good point, because I think a lot of people go to college for the right reasons. They're going for the movement. They're going for the like you said, lateral upwards movement from the basic no college education income jobs. But then there's that next level of having to understand that if you're in the debt, you really don't have mobility, because, like you're saying, if you can manage to float rent out there and the payments on your house where you are now, that's a situation that nobody, and I repeat, nobody, no matter how much they're making, well, okay, that was too much. But if you're making a fair amount of money and you're still in debt, like it's fairly obvious that you would not be able to float what Casey theoretically could.
Yeah, exactly. And what I'm referring to there is because I have a VA loan on this house, there would potentially be a negative cash flow if I were to rent it out today.
Yeah.
Maybe $200, but I can float that for a little bit until I pay the house down and get a better interest rate in this interest rate environment. But, before, I wouldn't even think about that. If I would have just decided it's going to take me 10 years to pay off this debt, I would still have, 70, 85K in debt. And, I wouldn't be able to even think about considering that opportunity.
Yeah. And it could lead to other opportunities that he's not even being presented with now, just because of what's happening. And I think another opportunity that you're kind of pursuing, which I wanted to get into a little bit, is actually what content you create and how you're trying to like grow your own brand there. And I just wanted to hear a little bit about how you got started into like actually making content and your passion behind it and everything like that.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess how I got started making content was my first video was like 10 years ago, and it was this video is Romeo and Juliet final, and it was basically just this thing that we had to do for English class in ninth grade, which now I think about it, it's more than 10 years ago. It was like 14 years ago. And they just recently gave me a copyright strike on that too. So the music that was in, I was like, what the heck? They're gonna anyways, that was pretty random. I was like, okay, like that video sucks, but anyways. So yeah, it got started then. And then like after that, I always wanted to do YouTube. And I would tell my friends like, hey, do you guys want to like make a YouTube video? And nobody ever wanted to do it. So I couldn't figure out like where was that avenue for me to like make YouTube videos. And I just like throughout my life, I would always ask people like, hey, do you want to make YouTube videos? And I was waiting for somebody to either give me permission or do them with me. And eventually, like running into all those finance YouTubers and getting so interested in the space, I was like, you know what? These people don't have many of them don't actually have a camera person. They don't have somebody making videos with them. It's not skits. It's literally just them talking to a camera. So I was like, I'm mostly being scared to start this YouTube channel. Like this is fear. This is a fear-based decision to not start the YouTube channel. So I got in front of the camera, made the worst video that you'll ever see. If you want to go to my Instagram, I made sure to not delete it because I don't ever want to forget how afraid I was on camera.
Yeah.
It's like a video called what did you get from college? And it's like this stupid joke of like, I basically go on in a suit and it's supposed to look like kind of serious. And then it's just a video like afterwards, it's like me partying or something like that. It's just like a video of me partying. Like, yeah, so that's what I got from college. And it's just this terrible video. So anyways, I'm not sure if I just answered the question. I just rambled a lot like an old man.
You're good. I think all of us have an interesting story regarding how we got into content creation. Like I've gone through many channels. I mean, like my old channel, all the videos are unlisted because I don't really want people to see those until
yeah.
But like I made really cringy vlogs. Like I'm talking, I'm trying to think of an example of cringy vlogs. I don't want to reference myself to anyone that's too bad. So let's just say it was cringy. I was junior in high school. I would vlog about just the most random things that really didn't have any sort of cohesion or anything like
Yeah.
that. Video games, and definitely the first couple videos we make are definitely worse than the best videos we make now. So don't feel like you're too far outside of everyone else there.
Yeah, for sure.
What?
One. Oh,
Yep, you go. You go.
I was gonna say one thing about that is that I forget what the guy's name is. African American guy, has like braids, and he's all about like content strategy or something like that. I forget what his name is.
Roberto
But
Blake.
that guy, yeah, Roberto Blake.
Yeah.
He said, I love one of his videos where he's like, your first 100 videos are just gonna suck straight out. And it's funny. It's been funny watching that the video count go up, because right now I'm making my 60th video, and I'm starting to get to the point where I'm like, I kind of like these videos now, whereas like video 10, 15, 20, I was just like, am I really going to put this out? Like, who's going to actually like this, And it wasn't even just like me being self-conscious. It was like, no, this video actually sucks. So like, but he's like, you have to put those out. So you have to go through those growing pains, like think about people like LeBron. Like LeBron didn't just show up, to the NBA draft. This dude was, 16 years of just basketball. That's how he showed up to the draft,
Yeah. And
So
there's a reason he was the number one pick, and the reason he's doing so well in the NBA right now. I guess basketball question, since you decided to bring it up. Have you watched The Last Dance?
Save the Last Dance?
No, have you watched The Last Dance? The documentary with Jordan.
Oh, no, I have not. I think he said Save the Last Dance. I was like, it's not a basketball question, bro. But
Yeah. It's just, I'm always curious. I think it's great. If you get the chance to, you need to watch it. It's top tier. I'm from Chicago, so that kind of that's something I'm pretty passionate about, the LeBron versus MJ debate. Going further with you talking about how like your first couple of videos sucked. I made a video like a week and a half ago that was like, I was like, yeah, everything needs to change. And even like as you're going through the process of making videos, I totally understand what you're saying with like, I like this video. Like when you're getting more into it, because I have a decent backlog of videos now because I'm making like 3 videos a week for the past like 7-8 weeks. And I remember I reached the realization a couple weeks ago of like, I'm making the same video over and over again. Like I didn't have B-roll. I'm just talking to a camera. Like somebody tell this guy he's just talking to a camera. It's really boring. So you definitely go through a lot of growing pains. And like I edited a video that the one that's going to come out on Sunday, because this comes out on Wednesday. And I was editing. I was like, oh, this is like fun. I don't know if you had an experience in a shift of like you enjoy editing your videos more now because you have like, I don't know, more inspiration towards them and they're like better videos. That makes sense.
yeah, I think it's like you start to build up a toolkit of things that you tend to do in your editing of your videos. And one thing that I would say for new content creators is that it can kind of hurt that first time you get a few hate comments or whatever. But I encourage people to really listen to those people, because sometimes they're just trolls on the internet. But
Yeah.
other times it's like, are they right? Are my videos boring? Are my videos uninformative? Do I keep on, like, am I blinking too much? Was one of them that I got. It's like, dude, you're blinking too much. And I was like, okay, well, that's probably because I had like this ring light and the camera was right there. So I was like, I couldn't see anything. So it's like, okay, you are blinking too much. So take the light, put it off to the side, and then, it's less so. So you gotta listen to those people, even if it like hurts you, it hurts your little feelings, you gotta listen to those people.
You gotta play to the strengths of what you have, but also go along with the crowd a little bit. I was told the opposite actually in the first couple of videos. Like I didn't blink in my first 2 videos because I would cut every single time. I'd like go to the next like 3-sentence spiel, and I didn't have a light. Well, I had a light directly in my face, but I was purposely like, my eyes wide open, and that definitely was a a closing experience for me because I realized I need to start looking off away from the camera because I was told basically like you're giving me like flight or flight right now, Demetri, because you're just
Yeah.
staring at the camera the entire time. And I was like, thank you for that feedback. I appreciate this. I appreciate that sort of. There's a level of support in positive feedback, but I know what you mean by trolls too. I
Yeah.
had a you know what? At this point, I don't think he's watching my videos anymore. I made a video I think called 3 Habits That Are Keeping You Poor. Okay, it's got the most views on my channel. That's not my channel trailer, so like it hit. It hit
Mhm.
regarding like YouTube search and all that kind of stuff. And I immediately say in the video, like, I'm not trying to say you're poor. I'm just saying these are 3 habits that have the propensity to like stop you from accumulating wealth. So it was just it was like a semi clickbaity title, but those
Yeah.
sometimes are what you need to make. Somebody just comments, "What a tool," and the next thing you know,
Yep.
got 8 dislikes. And then the next video, the second it drops, has 8 dislikes. And then the next video has 8 dislikes the second it drops. And then eventually he stopped like 3 videos ago. Because I think YouTube eventually realizes that you're doing that. And it actually stops because one video got 8 dislikes and then immediately went back to 0. And I'm like, he didn't undo that. Like YouTube figured it out. So there are
Yeah.
trolls on the internet for people who are going to make videos. Like, don't feel like just because somebody disliked your video 8 times. Like in the moment, I was like kind of sad about it. I was like, man, somebody really hates me or something. Like I must have really,
Yeah.
really angered somebody. But then I was like, well, I didn't really say anything to anger anybody. If someone's gonna get that bent out of shape about a title or a thumbnail,
Yeah.
then it's probably more their problem than mine because that's not my intention. And I think intention is always important. And I'm sure you making your content, your intentions to try to help people above all else. So
Yeah. There's a, like you're saying, like you're saying, you're like, somebody really hates me. Like that sucks. But what you come to find out is that somebody really hates themselves. You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
like there was this guy who would come on every video that I would post, and he would either make fun of something on my face, or he would like make fun of my hair. He'd be like, "Oh, look at your hair, blah blah blah." You know, look at your shirt. Like, why? Who's listening to this guy? This guy's an idiot. And then like eventually, like that guy, like I talked to him for a while, and then he was like reasonable for a while, and then he just like went back to trolling. And I was like, another thing is just, sometimes you just gotta use your block button, because this man
Yeah.
just wouldn't. He was relentless. I was like, all right, dude, like you never have anything actually of value to say. It's like there's nothing, like, like if somebody came on once and was like, hey, you should cut your hair before your videos, I'd be like, okay, that's one opinion, whatever. um but then like for somebody to just come on and just be like, just saying wild stuff that has nothing to do with, the video, has nothing to do with anything, just like trying to be insulting about, you know something that I said in the video. Like you're literally just constantly trying to just be negative. It's like, all right, well, clearly you have some issues of your own, so you can go resolve those in the block section of the video. So there's always one dislike as soon as my video posts, and I'm pretty sure it's that guy because he can't comment. So
That's fair. That's fair.
he still enjoys my content though. So shout out to him if he's still searching my name up and stuff. So
Yeah, I do want to thank the person who dropped the 8 dislikes, I guess, from back in the day, because dislikes are considered the same as likes by the YouTube algorithm. So
really,
yeah, so it's not a negative thing. I found out.
oh, just engagement.
Yeah, it's just social proof being negative, not any. The engagement's actually positive. So thanks. Moving on from that, I do want to talk to you a little bit about your thoughts on living a simple life. I think in my channel, I've started to talk more about minimalism more. And from what I can tell, and I saw something really cool on your Instagram about you starting to live more of a simple life in a wardrobe style way. So I just want to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I basically noticed that I don't really care what I wear in general. And the thing that prompted this whole like reduction of my wardrobe, and it's gonna expand into everything else in my life as well, was I'm probably, at some point I'm gonna be sent off somewhere, for the military. And I thought to myself, how much of this stuff that I own can I actually take? And or it wasn't even that thought. It was more like, I'm going to be there for 9 months, and some of my stuff is going to be here for 9 months.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, I want to I want to rent this place if I'm gone for 9 months, because I don't want to just float the mortgage for 9 months. So I was like, some of this stuff is just going to be here, and I'm not going to miss it. So why should I even own it in the first place? So
Great
that was
question.
really what prompted that reduction. I was like, if I'm not going to take it with me on a deployment, then obviously I don't care about it. If I can have it gone for 9 months and not miss it, then it doesn't need to be in my life. So that I feel like just that simplification, it kind of can streamline, your life as far as yeah, just like less mental clutter. So that was that decision. And next is my garage. There's like a microwave in there. There's like a bunch of stuff that, and then there's a bunch of army stuff that I wish I could get rid of, but that's can't do that.
How many what's the word for clothes that you wear together? Outfit. How many outfits do you have now then?
So I basically put a cap on what articles of clothing I could have. So
Oh, okay.
I have 5 workout shirts. I have 5 just like t-shirts for wearing out. I couldn't bring myself to throw away my polos, so I still have like most of those. There's like 5 of them. Um, I've got like 5 like sweaters. It's pretty much 5, except for things that were like I didn't throw away my underwear for the most part. Like I threw away some of them that were just like I'm never gonna wear these.
Yeah.
And my socks. So my socks, I've got 7 military socks and 7 civilian socks, because that's like how we pack our bags when we leave. So I was like, I'm just gonna get it to the point where I can pack this bag, and we always have our numbers that we're supposed to hit when we're going on like either a mission or we're going deploying, whatever. I was like, I'm gonna make my life like that, and then it's just gonna be a lot more simple.
Yeah, I'm getting to the point where a lot of the drawers that I have are like overflowed with stuff that I don't even wear anymore, and I'm starting to get
Yeah.
irritated by it. So I'm definitely thinking of like I've made the joke multiple times of like I'm gonna wear the same exact shirt in all my videos, and I'm just gonna like 10 of them, like my favorite YouTuber Matt Diavella. But the more I'm thinking about it, like I do like to change up the look of it mildly. So I definitely like the idea of like 5 of something. So I've thought about that a lot. Like I'm only gonna have like these 2 pair of jeans, these 2 pair of like cargo shorts, because those are the only things I wear. Like if it's nice out, I'm gonna wear like cargo or golf shorts. If it's not, I'm gonna wear jeans, and then I'm just gonna have the same shirts for like that entire. You know what I'm saying? Like for the summer or winter, I'll have a couple long, couple short sleeves, and that's kind of it. Because the overflowing of drawers, it's stressful. I don't know about you, but when you have like a drawer that's just filled with stuff and you're like, this is all in the same category, but I don't wear any of this.
Yeah, exactly. It feels like it literally feels like garbage. Like you're sifting through garbage to like
Yeah,
get to your stuff. Even though
it's
it's usable stuff, it's still in your mind it's garbage because you don't use it.
and somebody definitely could, and you can donate it, and somebody would really appreciate it. But you're
Yeah,
sitting there with
exactly.
this excess clothing, like I don't want it, and somebody could be using it. So I appreciate that a lot. Living in this sort of simple life, I definitely want to try to do that going forward a little more. I also want to talk to you a little bit about how you think that sort of little path of just having the outfit leads to like a little path during your like daily routine and that sort of thing.
So I would say that, you know, like we were going over earlier with the whole like 2 months and 2 years and 5 months thing. Like it was super easy for me to get there because I started to basically, and this is going to sound boring to some people. I started to walk the exact same path through every week. And I would wake up. I knew, or yeah. One more thing to add to that. I had this whiteboard on my wall
Okay.
that was like, this is what I do in the morning. And then I had a schedule of like what I do every day. So I would follow it every day. And like that, like I said, that's going to sound super boring, extreme to people, but it works. So I'd wake up, I'd go, brush my teeth, floss, whatever. I'd go get my vitamins, which was great. Even little things like this is going to be like maybe TMI for some people, but like I always had like problems with my feet or athlete's feet. And when
Mm-hmm.
I put it on that board to like, hey, spray your feet every day, and then, it was almost like magic. Like I looked down 3-4 months later and the athlete's foot is gone, and like I was unconsciously doing this like every day, just religiously doing it, doing it, doing it. And it's like, okay. And then there's exercise, put into there. And it's like, I kind of unconsciously start going through this life. And a lot of people go through life unconsciously, but they're not doing anything good. But
Yeah.
me, when I was doing those good things, it's like I wake up 4 months later and it's like, whoa, I'm more muscular now. just because I've just been following the same path over and over and over. Um, so that I think I just answered the question. I'm not sure.
Yeah, you did. I think a lot of it has to do with habit building, and you definitely did a good job of like structuring the habit building, which maybe a lot of people don't do. The video that hopefully you guys saw on Sunday was about how like I block schedule my whole, I block schedule my whole life, like wake up, prepare for bed, in bed, and everything in between. When I'm going to eat, when I'm going to eat breakfast, lunch, dinner, when I'm going to work on stuff, when I'm not going to work on stuff, when I'm going to hang out with my family. Like I just straight up schedule everything. And I also have like habit tracking as well, like when I take my supplements, when I brush my teeth. And when I started doing that, I realized I'm like, man, I just do this stuff more.
Yeah.
There's a complete different thing in your mindset when I told myself before, like, yeah, I'll take my supplements about 5 times a week. But it was really like, I don't know, 3 or 4 or 6 or, yeah. And also when, you're totally right. You're totally right. I never would have a structured time of this is what I'm doing it. But when I made a checklist about it, immediately 5 to 7 times a week, it was done. Yeah. And it is a little boring at times to think about it like that, but doing it is really not that bad. It's just like, it just becomes a part of your life. And then you never have to worry about, okay, when am I going to work on this? When am I going to take my supplements? Because you don't ever want to get yourself in a position where you're struggling to find the time to do the things that you have to do. Like, I'm sure if you're up at like 11 p.m. after a crazy day, you're not going to like go and look at your feet and be like, all right, I'm going to fix this athlete's foot now.
Yeah. Yeah. So one thing that I like to tell to people on the whole idea of scheduling and like space time, because I don't know, I really like space time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still discovering that mystery.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like one of my favorite statements or questions to ask people is like, what if I just told you that I'm going to meet you in Times Square? Like, okay.
Yeah, where? Yeah, where there's a lot of people there.
Like, I know where Times Square is, but like, are you going to meet me there like right now or in 5 years? You know, you got to meet with a goal or to meet with a person or to meet with anything, you have to be in the same space and the same time, you know, which is kind of like sci-fi-ish if you really, really go there. But, you know, if there's no time assigned to what you're going to do, then your goal doesn't exist without being somewhere in space and somewhere in time, you know? So like that, I really like that question or that statement, I guess, of like, yeah, what if I just said I was going to meet you in Times Square? You'd be like, okay, you literally just didn't tell me anything.
When, what part?
Yeah.
How long?
Are you though?
Are you though?
Should I go now?
You know what? Have you been to New York?
I have not. That's on the list.
That's on the list.
But it's not in time. See?
Yeah. Okay. All right. All right.
See,
yeah.
That's why it hasn't happened. It hasn't been scheduled.
Sense. That makes a lot of sense. It is a little sci-fi when you think about space-time, I guess. Being in this specific spot, this specific time, specific moment, specific day. All right. I don't want to get too creeped out by myself. Moving forward with the last topic, I do want to ask a little bit about how you've experienced this crazy beer thing because you're working in the medical field, you're testing for the word that I won't say. And I'm just curious how that's really impacted your life and your experience about it.
So being the person who's doing the testing, I think that it gives me a little bit of a different perspective because I can actually see how many tests are coming in the door. I can actually see how many tests are, you know, going positive percentage wise, you know, and I can actually see, you know, instead of just seeing like whatever's on the news, I can actually see, you know, the patient population and what the hospitals look like. People are like, oh, the hospitals are empty. Like personally, our hospital is pretty empty just because we're not really, well, we are now, but for the most part during the whole situation, we weren't seeing patients for just like normal stuff. It was like, either you have the disease or you're staying home. You know, you're not getting, you know, a tummy tuck. You're not, you know, you're not getting, you know, like your prescription refilled. We're sending that to you. You're staying home.
Exactly.
So yeah, the hospitals were empty, but I think that people took that out of context because the reason why the hospitals were empty is because they told everyone that didn't have the disease to go home. So, um, yeah, I guess that was more so up in Seattle, but yeah, the other different perspective I had on it is that a lot of people thought it was either a hoax or whatever, but when you can actually see people, you know, dying, and you see like the nurses, and you see like the actual, you're in the middle of the situation, and somebody's like saying something about like 5G, and you're like, do you
Mhm.
want to, how about let's have like a bring your idiot friend to work day, because people are literally dying at my place of business, and you're on the internet being an idiot. So
Yeah.
let's come on in and
See what
let's
the
have
real
you.
story is.
Yeah. So
That's a good. I'm glad you have that insight for it because right now things are crazy, and I'm sure a lot of people acknowledge that, and they know people are passing away and everything. But I was glad to hear that you had the experience, and I've wanted to talk to people who have been, like in the throes of everything going on, and I definitely know that the context of like people not being in the hospitals is definitely taken out of context completely because all like outpatient um, surgeries and all that kind of stuff was just straight up just gotten rid of. And inpatient stuff for a lot of the cases is not back yet. I know like outpatient came back because Illinois is kind of slowly getting back into things, but just because these certain parts of the hospitals aren't back open, like there's no that doesn't mean that the entirety of the system is just gone, and it doesn't mean that the beer thing isn't going on just because some of the hospitals that aren't tailored towards the exact thing you're claiming it's empty for. You know what I'm saying? Like just because one thing's happening doesn't mean the other thing's not happening. So it's frustrating to hear. Um, have you been finding yourself with a lot more time though?
I would say so, but I tend to fill my time, and just because for me there's such a strong connection between the way I use my time and my life outcomes. One thing that I think we talked about on the phone was just building up that mental toughness, and you know using your time for something that's out in the future. Like the first time that I was able to go to nationals as a track and field athlete when I was like 9 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Just persevering, grinding something out every day. And then I didn't know what the heck we were doing when I was younger. I was just like, why are we running so hard? This sucks. And then, going, 4 months later, and we're in this huge stadium down in Miami. And I'm like, whoa, all these people are here to see us run. And like, this is crazy, being on the biggest stage. And I was like, okay, so this was the reward. Like,
This is what
making
I
that
get out
time,
of it.
that connection between like, okay, I worked hard, it did suck, but there was a reward. And throughout my life, just getting all those, making that connection multiple times in multiple ways in different avenues, whether it be grades or whether it was sports or whatever, just continuously just making that connection, or whether it be, when my parents were making me work for money and then I get, whatever thing I wanted. So I've always connected my time to rewards. So I don't waste it because I want stuff, I want rewards. So like, I tend to not waste it because I have made that connection.
That's fair. I totally get where you're coming from here. I'd say one thing I would want, and that you know what, you reminded me when we got on the Zoom call, and I want like QC 35s or something.
Yeah.
Speaking of wanting things, like I just keep looking up during the Zoom call, and I'm like, man, I really want like some nice pair of Bluetooth headphones, and you got to work for it. And with the way we both kind of think about money, I'm sure it's hard for you to like justify just buying something without working for it. So
Hmm.
I definitely appreciate the thought behind putting your time to good use. With that being said, guys, that's all the topics I have for the video. I want to give you the floor for a second if you want to say anything, and we'll wrap this up.
All right. Yeah, I mean, thanks for having me on. I guess not too much to say. I think that we had a good talk here, and um, yeah, overall, I would just encourage people that with all this crazy stuff that's going on, to this is a great time to learn about the history of the context of what's going on. Specifically, um, two things that I would encourage people to look into is, for one, things that happened that caused and helped people through the Great Depression, because I don't want to call it a second Great Depression, but
Mm-hmm.
with the looting and with the the economic slowdown, it's not looking like it's too far fetched. So I
Yeah.
would encourage people to look into stuff like that. And additionally, it looks like we're about to go into some social unrest
Yeah.
as we tape this on, I believe this is the 31st.
Yeah.
I would encourage people to look into the systems of oppression, so that you can have an accurate knowledge of what people are talking about, an accurate knowledge of, people want to evoke people like Dr. King. Have an accurate knowledge of things that Dr. King said. Have an accurate
Yeah.
knowledge of, before you just go open your mouth, because you're gonna end up with your foot in your mouth if you don't really study up on the history. So that's what I would have to say in closing.
Well, I really appreciate you bringing that up. There is a lot of stuff, crazy stuff going on right now, and I further Casey's point of do your research, know what you're talking about, and then talk about it. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. I really appreciate your time, and this was a great talk. So with that being said, I will see you guys in the next one.